The Great Hall of the United Earth Council had never felt so cold. Admiral Daniel Harper stood with his hands clasped behind his back as the holographic image of the Velthary ambassador flickered to life before him. The crystalline being towered 8 feet tall, and its body was made of living glass that caught the light and scattered it into 1,000 colors. But there was no beauty in its presence today. There was only judgment. 300 years. That was how long humanity had been part of the Galactic Confederation. 300 years of following their rules and learning their ways and fighting their wars. And now it had come to this moment, in this cold chamber, where the fate of 17 billion souls would be decided by beings who had never truly accepted them. Secretary. General Lisa Monroe stepped forward from her position beside Daniel. She was a small woman, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles and buried too many soldiers. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Ambassador Thelvos, we received your summons. What has the council decided? The crystalline ambassador made a sound like wind passing through hollow tubes. The council has reached its verdict. The 12 elder species have voted on the matter of human membership in the Galactic Confederation. The result is unanimous. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Unanimous meant there would be no appeal. No second chance. No mercy. Humanity is to be expelled from Confederation space, Thelvos continued. You have 60 standard cycles to remove all human presence from our territories. Any vessel found within our borders after that period will be destroyed without hesitation or warning. The words fell like hammer blows. Behind Daniel, the other council members shifted and whispered. General Kevin Brooks took an angry step forward, but Daniel raised his hand to hold him back. This was not the time for outbursts. You're exiling us, Lisa said. After 3 centuries of loyal membership, after everything we have done for this confederation, you are throwing us out like unwanted animals. We are protecting the peace, Thelvos replied. Your species has proven itself incompatible with civilized coexistence. You are too aggressive, too violent, too unpredictable. The elder species cannot allow such a dangerous element to remain among us. Dangerous? Kevin could not hold his tongue. We defended your worlds. We fought your enemies. We lost 4 million soldiers protecting colonies that did not belong to us. And that is precisely what disturbs us, the ambassador said. No species should embrace warfare so readily. No species should find violence so natural. When the Hollow Swarm attacked the outer systems, it was humanity that volunteered to lead the defense. Your soldiers displayed a brutality that shocked even our most hardened commanders. You did not simply defeat the swarm. You hunted them. You pursued them into their own territory and slaughtered them without mercy. We ended the threat, Daniel said quietly. We did what none of your elder species were willing to do. You revealed your true nature, and that nature is incompatible with peace. The other holograms of the council appeared around the chamber. The Torvani floated in their water-filled projections, and their fins moved slowly as they watched with cold eyes. The Morvith pulsed with ancient energy that predated most stars. The insectoid Krell clicked their mandibles in what might have been satisfaction. 12 species. 12 votes. Not one voice had spoken for humanity. Lisa looked at each of them in turn. Where do you expect us to go? Our colonies are within Confederation space. Our people have built lives here, families, communities. You cannot simply erase 300 years of history. You may settle beyond our borders, the Torvani representative said. Her voice bubbled through the water of her projection. The outer rim remains unclaimed. The region you call the Dark Reach. Devon laughed bitterly. The Dark Reach is a death sentence. The Kithraver control those territories. They are predators who hunt other species for sport. You are sending 17 billion people to be slaughtered. We are giving you an opportunity to survive, Thelvos said. Many on this council argued for immediate termination. Be grateful for our mercy. Daniel stared at the crystalline ambassador and felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was something harder. Something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Very well, Lisa said after a long silence. We accept your judgment. Humanity will leave Confederation space within 60 cycles. We will take our ships and our people, and we will go into the darkness you have prepared for us." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried across the chamber like the edge of a blade. "I want every species here to remember this day. Remember that we came to you in peace. Remember that we offered our friendship and our strength and asked only to exist alongside you. Remember that we bled for your worlds and died for your causes and never once turned our weapons against the Confederation." The elder species watched in silence as she continued. "Remember also that we warned you. For decades we reported strange movements in the deep reaches of space. We told you something was stirring out there. Something old and hungry and patient. You dismissed our warnings as human paranoia. You called us fearful children seeing monsters in the dark." She stepped closer to the hologram of Thelvos. "When that darkness comes for you, and it will come, I want you to remember that you sent away the only species that knew how to fight it. And when your worlds burn and your people scream for salvation, remember that you chose this." The ambassador showed no reaction. "Your warnings have been recorded. Your time begins now." The holograms vanished and the chamber fell into shadow. For a long moment no one moved. Then Kevin slammed his fist against the wall hard enough to crack the surface. "They have murdered us," he said. "The Kethraver will tear through our fleet within months." "No." Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the stars that humanity would soon leave behind. "They have set us free. Free to die. Free to become what we were always meant to be." Daniel turned to face the others. "For 300 years we have lived under their restrictions. We have limited ourselves because they feared our potential. We have been guests in a house that was never meant to be our home." He looked at Lisa and saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "We build our own house," she said slowly, "and we build it our way." "The Kethraver are hunters," Daniel said. "They have never encountered prey that fights back with everything it has. They have never faced a species that refuses to die." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "They are about to learn what humanity is capable of when we have nothing left to lose." The evacuation began the next cycle. Ships that had carried diplomats and traders now carried refugees. Families packed what little they could take and watched their homes shrink to points of light. Children asked their parents where they were going, and the parents had no answers. The elder species celebrated as the human fleet departed. They held ceremonies and made speeches about a new era of peace and stability. They believed they had solved the human problem. They had no idea what they had truly created. In the darkness of the Outer Rim, humanity would face horrors beyond imagination. They would suffer and bleed, and many would die. But those who survived would become something the galaxy had never seen. The Confederation had just made their greatest mistake, and one day they would pay for it. 15 years of silence. That was what the Galactic Confederation received from humanity after the exile. No distress signals. No pleas for help. No desperate transmissions begging to return. The elder species assumed the humans had perished in the dark reach as expected. The Kethrava were efficient hunters, and 17 billion refugees would have been easy prey. The matter was considered closed. "They could not have been more wrong, Commander." Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and watched the stars through the main viewport. The ship was massive. It was the first dreadnought class vessel humanity had ever constructed, and it had been built entirely in exile, using resources torn from hostile worlds and enemy wreckage. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were not the same humans who had fled Confederation space 15 years ago. These were survivors, warriors, predators in their own right. "Status report," Maria said, without turning from the viewport. Lieutenant Christopher Wells pulled up the tactical display. The hologram showed a web of defense stations and patrol routes surrounding a blue-green world. Outer defense grid is at full capacity. Shipyard 7 has completed the 42nd cruiser ahead of schedule. Ground forces report all sectors secure, Maria nodded. Through the viewport, she could see the lights of New Terra glittering on the dark side of the planet below. It was a beautiful world now. 15 years ago, it had been a barren rock, orbiting a dying star. Humanity had transformed it through sheer determination and desperation. The door behind her opened, and Admiral Daniel Harper entered the bridge. His hair had turned silver in the years since the exile, but his eyes remained sharp and cold. He walked with the steady pace of a man who had seen too much death to be hurried by anything. "News from the scouts," he said. It was not a question. Maria turned to face him. "The Confederation is in trouble. The Hollow Swarm has returned. They have been hitting the outer colonies for 6 months now. The Velthary homeworld is under siege." Daniel showed no surprise. "And they want our help?" "Their pride will not allow them to ask. But our intelligence suggests they are losing badly. The swarm has evolved since we last fought them. Their numbers have increased tenfold. What about the Council?" "Fracturing. The Torvani are threatening to withdraw from the Alliance. The Krell have already pulled their fleets back to defend their own territory. The elder species are turning on each other." Daniel walked to the viewport and stood beside Maria. For a long moment, he simply stared at the stars. "Do you remember what it was like when we first arrived here?" Maria remembered. She would never forget. The first year in the Dark Reach had been a nightmare. The Cathraver had descended upon the refugee fleet like wolves upon sheep. Their bioships had torn through human vessels with terrible ease. Millions had died in the first months alone. "We lost 2 colonies before we learned how to fight them," she said quietly. "We lost more than colonies. We lost the people we used to be." Daniel turned to face her. "The Confederation feared our capacity for violence. They had no idea how much we were holding back. Cathraver had expected easy prey. They had hunted countless species across the Dark Reach, and none had ever offered serious resistance. But humanity was different. Humanity did not simply flee or surrender. Humanity studied the enemy, learned their tactics, found their weaknesses. And then humanity struck back with a fury that shocked even the ancient predators. The war against the Cathraver had lasted 5 years. It had cost humanity dearly. But in the end, it was the hunters who fell. One hive after another was destroyed until the Cathraver leadership was forced to make a choice: continue fighting and face extinction, or submit and survive. They chose survival. And in doing so, they became something unprecedented. They became allies of humanity, not slaves or servants, but partners bound by mutual respect. The predators had finally found a species more dangerous than themselves. "Prepare the fleet," Daniel said. "All 12 battle groups." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Sir, the Confederation cast us out, sent us here to die, but we did not die. We grew stronger." He looked at the tactical displays showing the positions of humanity's vast armada. "Now they will learn why the ancient species of this galaxy once feared humanity. Not because we are violent, because we remember. We remember every insult, every betrayal, every life lost because of their arrogance. We are going to save them. We are going to remind them of what they threw away." The orders went out across the human colonies. Ships that had been patrolling the borders were recalled. Soldiers who had been training for years received their deployment notices. The great shipyards worked around the clock to prepare every vessel for combat. Captain Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of his cruiser and watched the fleet assemble. He had been a young officer during the exile. He had watched his family die when the Cathraver destroyed the transport they were traveling on. He had survived only because his captain had thrown him into an escape pod at the last moment. That captain had died with the ship. "It is really happening," said his first officer, Lieutenant Patricia Hayes. "We are going back," Nathan confirmed. "But not as refugees. Not as outcasts begging for scraps." He turned to face his crew. "We return as conquerors." The fleet gathered above New Terra. 4,000 warships of various sizes formed into 12 battle groups. At the center of the formation sat the Leviathan. It was humanity's mobile fortress, a vessel so massive that it generated its own gravitational field. It had taken 10 years to build, and it represented the peak of human engineering combined with technology salvaged from a dozen conquered species. Admiral D. Harper stood on the command deck of the Leviathan and addressed the fleet through a system-wide broadcast. His voice reached every ship and every soldier. 15 years ago, we were driven from our homes by species who called themselves civilized. They feared us because we knew how to fight. They exiled us because we refused to become weak like them. They sent us into the darkness, hoping we would disappear. He paused and let the words sink in. We did not disappear. We survived. We conquered. We built an empire in the very territory they believed would destroy us. And now the enemies they could not defeat are tearing their worlds apart. On every ship, soldiers listened in silence. Today we return to Confederation space, not to beg, not to ask permission. We return to show them what humanity has become. We return to save the very species who abandoned us. And when the battle is over and the enemy is destroyed, we will remind the galaxy of a simple truth. His voice hardened to steel. You do not exile humanity and expect us to forget. You do not send us to die and expect us to forgive. We warned them about what was coming. They did not listen. Now, they will face the consequences of their choice. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. 4,000 ships vanished from the Dark Reach and hurtled toward Confederation space, toward vengeance, toward a reckoning that had been 15 years in the making. The elder species had no idea what was coming, but they would learn soon enough. The sky above Velthari Prime had turned black. Not the natural darkness of night, but an unnatural shadow cast by millions of hollow swarm bioships that blotted out the stars. The crystalline spires of the Velthari capital city trembled as explosions rocked the planet's surface. Fires burned in districts that had stood for 10,000 years. The screams of the dying echoed through streets that had never known war. Ambassador Thelvos stood in the ruins of what had once been the Confederation Council chamber. Dome had collapsed and shattered. Crystal lay everywhere like frozen tears. Around him, the holograms of the surviving elder species flickered with failing power. Their faces showed something he had never seen before in their ancient eyes: fear. The outer defense fleet is gone, the Torvani representative reported. Her voice trembled through the water of her projection. The swarm consumed it in less than 3 hours. We have nothing left to stop them. Our ground forces are overwhelmed, added the Krell commander. His mandibles clicked nervously. They adapt to every weapon we deploy. Nothing works for long. Thelvos looked at the burning sky. The hollow swarm had returned stronger than anyone had imagined possible. In the 15 years since humanity had driven them back, the swarm had evolved, grown, multiplied. Now they numbered in the billions, and their hunger was endless. We must send a message, said an ancient Morvith, whose energy form flickered weakly, to the humans. They will not come, Thelvos said. We condemned them. We sent them to die in the Dark Reach. Then we must beg. The words hung in the air. For a species as proud as the Velthari, the very concept of begging was humiliating beyond measure. But pride meant nothing when extinction was knocking at the door. The transmission was prepared and sent into the Dark Reach. It was a simple message stripped of all diplomatic language. A plea for survival from those who had once held all the power. For 3 days, there was no response. The swarm continued its assault. Cities fell. Millions died. The Velthari began to accept that their species would end on the world where it had begun. Then on the 4th day, the sensors detected something impossible. A massive energy signature approaching from the outer rim. Something was coming through faster than light space. Something enormous. The swarm detected it too. A portion of their fleet turned away from the planet to face this new arrival. They had consumed 100 worlds and never encountered resistance they could not overwhelm. Whatever was coming would simply be more food for the endless hunger. The first human ships emerged from Fold, space-like predators breaking through ice. They were not the same vessels that had fled Confederation space 15 years ago. These were warships built for one purpose: destruction. Captain Amanda Price stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched as more and more ships appeared around her. The 2nd battle group, the 5th, the 8th. Cruisers and destroyers and frigates formed into precise attack formations with a coordination that came from years of constant warfare. And then the Leviathan arrived. The mobile fortress emerged. From Fold space, and the very fabric of reality seemed to shudder. It was 5 miles long, a mountain of metal and weapons that dwarfed everything the Confederation had ever built. Weapons platforms extended from its hull like the spines of some prehistoric beast. Its presence alone was a statement. Humanity had not simply survived. Humanity had become something terrifying. Admiral Daniel Harper opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system. Human and alien alike heard his voice. "This is Admiral Daniel Harper of the United Human Dominion to all Confederation vessels and Hollow Swarm forces. We have returned." On the surface of Velthary Prime, the survivors looked up at their sensors in disbelief. 4,000 human warships now filled the space above their world. But that was not what made them stare in horror. Flying alongside the human fleet were Keithraver bioships. The predators who had terrorized the Dark Reach for millennia now served as humanity's vanguard. The hunters had become the hunting dogs of a more dangerous master. The swarm reacted with typical aggression. 40% of their fleet turned to engage this new threat. Millions of bioships swarmed toward the human formation. They had numbers. They had hunger. They had never lost. Admiral reported Captain Nathan Cole from his position commanding the 3rd Battle Group. "Enemy contact in 7 minutes. They are coming in fast." "Good," Daniel replied. "All ships execute Formation Omega. Show them what humanity learned in the dark." The battle began, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human warships moved with supernatural coordination. Formations shifted and adapted in real time, as if controlled by a single mind. Weapons that the Confederation had never seen cut through swarm. Bioships like fire through paper. The swarm tried to adapt as they always did. They changed their attack patterns. They mutated their defenses. But every time they shifted, the humans shifted faster. Every weakness they tried to cover was already being exploited. Amanda watched from the Retribution as her ship's weapons tore through a cluster of enemy vessels. "Target the larger organisms. They coordinate the smaller ones." "Confirmed," her weapons officer replied. Firing solution locked. The main cannon discharged, and a beam of concentrated energy split the void. A swarm command creature half a mile long shuddered and died. Around it, 1,000 smaller organisms went into chaos as their coordination collapsed. This was what humanity had learned in the Dark Reach. This was why the Keithraver had it. Humans did not just fight. They studied. They analyzed. They found the cracks in every enemy and drove wedges into them until the whole structure collapsed. 6 hours. That was how long it took to reduce the swarm fleet above Velthary Prime to drifting debris. 6 hours to accomplish what the combined forces of the Confederation had failed to do in 6 months? Daniel Harper stood on the command deck of the Leviathan and watched the last enemy vessels burn. Around him, his officers waited in silence. They knew what came next. "Track their retreat vector," Daniel ordered. "Find out where they are running to, or they are falling back toward the Korath Nebula. Our scouts report that is where the main swarm presence is concentrated. The Queen's hive world, then that is where we are going." Maria Santos looked at him. "We could stop here. We have saved Velthary Prime. We have proven our point. The swarm will rebuild if we leave them alive. They will return in 10 years or 20 or 100. And the next time there might not be anyone left to stop them." Daniel turned to face the viewport. In the distance, the fire still burned on the Velthary surface. "We finish this. We hunt them to their home, and we end them. No mercy, no negotiation, no survivors." The fleet reformed and prepared for the jump to the Korath Nebula. Below them, the Velthary watched their saviors depart and wondered what humanity had become in those long years of exile. They had sent humans into the darkness, hoping they would disappear. Instead, the darkness had made them into something far more dangerous. Something that did not know how to stop. Something that remembered every wrong done to them and repaid it tenfold. The hollow swarm had consumed worlds without number. They had never known fear. But as the human fleet entered fold space and vanished toward their home world, the swarm, Queen felt something she had never experienced. For the first time in her ancient existence, she understood what it meant to be prey. The war against the hollow. Swarm lasted 8 months. 8 months of relentless hunting across 3 star clusters. 8 months of battle after battle as humanity pursued their enemy to the very edge of known space. The elder species watched from their damaged worlds and could not believe what they were witnessing. This was not warfare as they understood it. This was extermination. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Hayes stood on the observation deck of the assault carrier, furious, and watched another swarm hive world burn. The planet below had been covered with billions of the creatures just hours ago. Now it was a ball of fire visible from orbit. Human ground forces had deployed incendiary weapons that turned the very atmosphere into a weapon. Nothing survived. Is this what we have become? She asked quietly. Captain Gregory Shaw stood beside her. His face was hard and showed no emotion as he watched the destruction. We became what we needed to become. The Dark Reach taught us that mercy is a luxury the dead cannot afford. The Confederation taught us that trust is a blade others will use to cut your throat. There must have been civilians down there. Young ones, non-combatants. The swarm does not have civilians. Every organism serves the collective. Every creature feeds the hunger. If we leave even one hive intact, they will rebuild. They will return. And the next time humanity might not be strong enough to stop them. Patricia watched the fires spread across the planet. She had joined the fleet as an idealist. She had believed humanity could be better than the elder species who had exiled them. Now she wondered if they had simply become a different kind of monster. The campaign continued without pause. Admiral Harper drove his forces forward with relentless determination. Every time the swarm tried to make a stand, the human fleet crushed them. Every time they tried to retreat, the humans followed. There was no negotiation. No surrender accepted. The war would end only one way. Captain Nathan Cole led his battle group through the remnants of another enemy formation. His ship had taken damage in a dozen engagements, but the crews had learned to make repairs on the move. There was no time to stop. No time to rest. The Admiral had made that clear. New contact, his sensor officer reported. We are picking up massive energy signatures ahead. This is it. The Queen's world. Nathan looked at the display. The swarm homeworld was surrounded by defensive formations unlike anything they had encountered before. Thousands of the largest bioships humanity had ever seen formed a living wall around the planet. Behind them, the world itself pulsed with dark energy. The hive mind was concentrated here. The Queen herself waited at the center of her web. All ships report ready, Nathan said into the fleet channel. Admiral Harper's voice came through the speakers. This is where it ends. The Queen controls the entire swarm through her connection to the collective. If she dies, the swarm dies with her. The defenses are massive, Maria Santos observed. We will take heavy losses breaking through, and we take heavy losses. Every soldier in this fleet knew what they signed up for. Every one of them has lost someone to the swarm, or the Confederation, or the Cathraver. They will not hesitate. The attack began with a bombardment that lit up the entire system. Human warships unleashed weapons that had been designed specifically for this moment. Particle beams and plasma torpedoes and missiles that carried payloads of antimatter slammed into the swarm defensive line. The bioships fought back with desperate fury. They knew this was the end. The Queen screamed through the hive mind and drove her children to suicidal attacks. Swarm creatures threw themselves at human ships without regard for their own survival. Gregory Shaw commanded his assault carrier through the chaos. Around him, ships died on both sides. A human destroyer took a direct hit and broke apart. A swarm dreadnought equivalent was cut in half by concentrated fire from 3 cruisers. The void was filled with debris and bodies and the flashes of countless weapons. Concentrate fire on the lead organisms, Gregory ordered. Break their coordination. Targeting now. Firing. The battle raged for hours. Human losses mounted, but the swarm losses were catastrophic. For every human ship destroyed, 10 swarm vessels were reduced to wreckage. The defensive line began to crack. Admiral Harper watched from the Leviathan as his forces pushed through the last barrier. Landing forces prepare for deployment. The Queen's chamber is located deep beneath the planet's surface. We are going to dig her out. The ground assault was led by soldiers who had spent 15 years fighting in the Dark Reach. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any unaugmented human. They carried weapons that could level buildings with a single shot. and they were accompanied by Keithraver, warriors who had pledged their strength to humanity's cause. Patricia Hayes was among the first wave to land. Her boots hit the organic surface of the hive world, and immediately she was surrounded by swarm defenders. Her weapon discharged again and again as she advanced through the tunnels. Around her, soldiers fell, but more pressed forward to take their places. The tunnels led down into the heart of the world. The walls pulsed with veins of bioluminescent fluid. The air was thick with spores that their suits filtered out. Deeper and deeper they went until they reached the central chamber. The queen was enormous. She filled a cavern that could have held a small city. Her body was a mass of tentacles and eyes and mouths that screamed in frequencies that tore at the minds of everyone who heard them. She was ancient. She was powerful. And she was terrified. "You cannot destroy me," she shrieked through 100 mouths. "I am eternal. I am the hunger that consumes all." Admiral Harper stepped forward. He had insisted on leading the final assault himself. "You are a remnant of a dead age. Your time is over. I have consumed civilizations older than your species. I have devoured stars. I will consume you and your pathetic worlds and everything you have ever loved." "No." Daniel raised his weapon. "You will not." The execution of the Swarm Queen was broadcast to every surviving ship in the fleet. Soldiers watched as their admiral fired the shot that ended the greatest threat the galaxy had known. They watched as the Queen's body shuddered and collapsed. They watched as the hive mind, shattered in billions of swarm creatures across the galaxy, suddenly found themselves alone for the first time in their existence. Without the Queen to guide them, the swarm became mindless animals. They turned on each other or simply stopped functioning. Within days, the threat that had terrorized the Confederation for centuries was reduced to scattered beasts that could be hunted down at leisure. Humanity had won. But standing in that chamber, surrounded by the corpse of an ancient god, Gregory Shaw felt no triumph. He felt only exhaustion and a growing certainty that this was just the beginning. "What now?" Patricia asked. Gregory looked at the admiral, who was already turning to leave the chamber. "Now we decide what kind of species we want to be. We have proven we can destroy anything that threatens us. The question is whether we can build something worth protecting." The fleet gathered above the dead swarm homeworld. 4,000 ships, and the soldiers who crewed them waited for orders. The Confederation was shattered. The elder species were scattered and broken. The galaxy lay open before humanity like a feast waiting to be consumed. Admiral Harper addressed his forces one final time. "The war is over, but our work has just begun." 20 years had passed since the fall of the Hollow Swarm. 20 years since humanity had emerged from the dark. Reach and reshape the galaxy with fire and blood. The old Confederation was a memory now. Its Grand Council chambers stood empty on a dozen worlds. Its treaties and protocols had become historical footnotes. In its place, something new had risen. Something stronger. Secretary General Benjamin Torres stood at the podium of the Terran Alliance Council and looked out at the assembled representatives. There were 47 species in the Alliance now. Some had joined willingly. Others had required more persuasion. But all of them acknowledged humanity's leadership. All of them understood that the rules had changed. The council chamber was built on new Terra. It was a massive structure of glass and steel that caught the light of the twin suns and scattered it across the hall like liquid gold. Human architects had designed it to be both beautiful and intimidating, a reminder of what humanity could create and what humanity could destroy. Among the delegates sat the Velthiri. Their crystalline forms were duller than they had been 20 years ago. The siege of their homeworld had broken something in their species. They no longer spoke of elder wisdom or ancient traditions. They spoke only of survival and gratitude. Ambassador Thelvos rose to address the council. He was the same being who had delivered humanity's exile sentence 35 years ago. Time had not been kind to him. "When I was young, I believed the Confederation would last forever," he began. His voice was weaker than Benjamin remembered. "We thought ourselves the guardians of galactic civilization. We believed we knew what was best for every species under our protection." He paused and his crystal body flickered with pale light. We looked upon humanity and saw only danger. We saw your capacity for violence and we were afraid. We failed to see the strength that came with it. We failed to understand that sometimes violence is necessary to protect what matters most. Benjamin listened in silence. He had heard many apologies over the years, some sincere, some motivated purely by fear. He was never sure which category Thelvos fell into. 35 years ago, we cast humanity into the darkness. We expected you to die. Instead, you conquered the very forces that were meant to destroy you. You defeated the Kethraver. You exterminated the Hollow Swarm. You accomplished in months what the Confederation could not achieve in centuries. The ambassador lowered his head in a gesture of submission that would have been unthinkable for a Velthari a generation ago. We were wrong. We were arrogant. We were fools. And we have paid the price for our foolishness. He looked up at Benjamin. The question I must ask now is this. Why did you save us? After everything we did to your people? After the exile and the abandonment and the centuries of contempt? Why did you come to our rescue? The chamber fell silent. Every representative watched the human leader. This was the question that had haunted the elder species since the day human warships appeared above Velthari Prime. Benjamin stepped forward. He was not an imposing man. He was of average height, with gray hair and a face lined by decades of responsibility. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an entire civilization. We remember who we wanted to be. Before you cast us out, he paused to let the words settle. When humanity first reached for the stars, we dreamed of friendship. We wanted to explore the universe alongside other species. We wanted to learn from civilizations older and wiser than ourselves. We wanted to build something together. His eyes swept across the council chamber, but you forced us to become warriors. You pushed us into the darkness and made us fight for every breath. You transformed us into the very thing you feared, and for 15 years we hated you for it. We trained and built and planned for the day we would return and make you pay. The elder species representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had always suspected this was the truth beneath humanity's words of alliance. But hatred is exhausting, Benjamin continued. It consumes everything it touches. When we arrived at Velthari Prime, we had a choice. We could have watched your world burn. We could have let the swarm finish what they started and then picked through the wreckage for anything useful. He shook his head slowly. We chose differently. Not because we forgave you, not because we forgot what you did, but because we refused to let your cruelty define us forever. You tried to make us into monsters. We chose to become something else. Admiral Daniel Harper sat in the observation gallery above the chamber. He was old now. His hair was white, and his body carried the scars of 100 battles. But his eyes remained sharp as he watched the proceedings below. Beside him sat Christina Marshall. She had helped write the Constitution of the Terran Alliance. She had spent 20 years shaping the laws that governed nearly half the galaxy. Do you think they understand? She asked quietly. Daniel considered the question. Some of them, the ones who fought beside us. The ones who saw what we sacrificed to end the swarm threat. The others will learn in time. And if they do not, then they will exist outside our protection. And when the next threat emerges, they will face it alone. He watched Benjamin speak about the principles of the Alliance, about equality and mutual defense and the obligations of member species. But I do not think it will come to that. Fear is an effective teacher. Christina nodded. You never really forgave them, did you? No, Daniel's voice was calm. There was no anger in it anymore, just cold certainty. I remember every face of every soldier who died fighting the Confederation's wars. I remember every child who starved. During the first years in the Dark Reach, I remember the look in their eyes when they realized no one was coming to save us. It turned to face her, but forgiveness is not required for coexistence. The Alliance works because every species understands the consequences of betrayal. They saw what we did to the Q-Raver. They saw what we did to the swarm. They know that if they turn against us, they will face the same fate. In the chamber below, Benjamin concluded his address. The Terran Alliance is not the Confederation. We do not exile species for being different. We do not abandon allies when they become inconvenient. We stand together against the darkness. That is the only path forward. He looked directly at Thelvos. You asked why we saved you? The answer is simple. Because that is who we choose to be. Humanity does not forget the past. But we will not be prisoners of it. We were forced into exile. We were compelled to leave everything we knew. You warned us of the consequences, and we warned you in return. His voice hardened just slightly. You faced those consequences. Not destruction. Not revenge. Something worse for a species as proud as yours. You faced the truth that you were wrong about everything. You faced the reality that the species you despised became your only hope of survival. You faced the knowledge that humanity is everything you feared and everything you needed. The session ended, and the representatives filed out of the chamber. Above them, Daniel Harper watched them go. 47 species, hundreds of worlds, an alliance that spanned half the galaxy. All of it built from the ashes of exile. We won, Christina said. Daniel shook his head. Winning implies the fight is over. The fight is never over. There will always be new threats, new challenges, new species that think they can take what we have built. And when they come, Daniel Harper smiled. It was not a warm expression. It was the smile of a predator who had learned exactly how dangerous the universe could be and had decided to become more dangerous still. When they come, they will learn what the Confederation learned, what the Keith Raver learned, what the Hollow Swarm learned at the very end. He turned and walked away from the gallery. His final words echoed in the empty space. Humanity does not ask permission to survive, and we never forget those who tried to destroy us.